Disclaimer: the following program is designed to offend, provoke, and challenge your religious sensibilities. It contains content that will likely offend anyone who holds religion sacred. This is for those with thick skin or a taste for the harsh truth. If you're easily offended or cherish your religious views, please turn off now. Viewer discretion is strongly advised. You have been warned. So Christ came from a drug word, that's where we left off, but Hillman doesn't stop at vocabulary. Part 2 dives deeper into temples, tragedies, toxins, and theology, and shows how Christianity didn't just change the language, it burned the whole system down and built its brand on the ashes. This isn't about whether Jesus got high, it's about how an entire ritual worldview got scrubbed clean, then replaced with obedience and incense. If that sounds like exaggeration, keep watching, because Hillman's not guessing, he's still citing. And the evidence gets weirder. Now, I can't leave his book pages on screen, but I am legally allowed to show them for 2 to 4 seconds since I'm critiquing them, and that's what I'm going to do. You can pause when you see them and read them yourselves, so I'm not keeping anything hidden, and you can clearly see the words written by the man Hillman himself. So let's get straight into it, because he covers a lot. Hillman points to Greek tragedy, particularly the Bacchae, to expose what modern theology likes to ignore. Ancient religious experience was physical, sensory, and chemically altered. In the Bacchae, Euripides describes Dionysian rituals filled with ecstatic movement, breathwork, frenzy, and substance use. The language isn't vague. It includes terms related to Chrio, the act of anointing, used in the context of altered states. These weren't metaphors for prayer, they were ritual technologies. Hillman's point isn't that Euripides used the word Christos as a drug reference. He didn't. But the vocabulary, Chrio, inhalation, applied substances, was part of a ritual system designed to induce vision and break down the rational mind. Christianity inherited that language. Then, it erased the context it came from. Hillman calls it what it is, historical laundering of a sort. They kept the words, but they buried the meanings. Revelation 3:18 says, "And with eye-salve anoint thine eyes that thou mayest see." Most people read that as a metaphor, but here's the thing. The verb is enchriō, to rub in or anoint with a medicated poultice, not aleiphō. The noun is kalorion, an actual eye salve or poultice used in classical medical texts, Celsus, Epictetus, etc. Aleiphō is a different verb to smear olive oil and doesn't occur here. The root chrio, which enchriō compounds, shows up in ancient pharmacopoeias where anointing meant dosing the body with substances, sometimes psychoactive. Now, to be clear, Hillman never cites this verse, at least not that I could find in his books. He might somewhere else. Honestly, I haven't watched every single one of his videos. I don't have that many hours. But if his argument holds that Chrio carried a drug word sense in antiquity, then this line might not be purely poetic. It could be a linguistic fossil. A tiny leftover from when anointing the eyes meant apply something, directly, chemically, physically, to change perception. I'm not saying Revelation is a pharmacological manual, but this line hits different when you realize the church spent centuries trying to scrub away any association between Christian language and real-world medicine. This verse isn't suspicious because it's weird, it's suspicious because it sounds like something that accidentally survived before the editors could sanitize it. So I did watch the Danny Jones podcast with Bart Ehrman and Danny, and they talked about the longer ending of Mark, which includes this gem, "And if any deadly thing they may drink, it shall not hurt them." Most scholars say it's late, legendary, and metaphorical, so they toss it. Hillman doesn't toss it. He knows it's late. He just thinks that makes it historically revealing, not useless. So where's he getting it from? Well, in his book, I found this. I'll put it on the screen. He's talking about Nicander's poison ritual. He points to antidote texts like this, where people didn't just survive poison. They drank it on purpose, not to prove faith, to survive a cultic ordeal under priestly supervision, with known symptoms and often a known antidote. Hillman isn't saying Jesus ran a pharmacology lab. He's saying this line reflects a cultural residue, a world where chemical knowledge and religious power weren't separate. Early Christianity didn't invent the idea, it inherited it, then sanitized it. Now here's where Bart Ehrman enters the chat. Bart scoffs at Hillman, calls the whole idea categorically false, says Jesus didn't really say that because Mark 16:18 was added by scribes. Then without blinking admits that early Christians believed it. Go check out the podcast. I'm not bothering to show videos of it. If you're not familiar with Danny Jones, go watch his stuff. It's great. Also, that axe shows people surviving poison. That snake handling cults still use this verse. that ancient medicine used venom and antidotes, but somehow suggesting that those ideas might have influenced the text? Nope, that's ridiculous. Can't have that. So to recap really quick for you, Christians believed it, ancient cults practiced it, the verse still says it, but Hillman's the problem for suggesting there's a pharmacological origin? Sure, Bart, totally irrational. The myth stayed, the pharmacology didn't. But the condescension, that made the final cut. If you thought Hillman was being metaphorical, think again. In a recent video, he doubled down on the claim.
I have been searching now for a long time using the TLG, and I am having a difficult time finding a single reference to where the Christ is divorced from some kind of drug.
He doesn't just say Chrio had drug associations, he says it was a drug term, not symbolically, chemically. And this isn't vague. Hillman cites Galen's De Locuis Affectus as one of his core sources, a medical text that makes a hard distinction between two types of anointing. Aleio, casual oiling, like for athletes, and that word Chrio, pharmacological application, especially for treatments meant to stimulate or alter the body and sometimes the mind. Look, this inability to take him seriously by some scholars is a big problem for me. I want to know if he's right. I don't care if you think he's crazy, and I don't care if he acts crazy. I care about the facts. Debate him in a letter. I don't care. Find the truth. Because some of this stuff is actually legitimately interesting, and he may have a point on a lot of it. But anyway, that's the core of his claim. Christos wasn't coined to reflect divine status. It was inherited from a drug vocabulary, then stripped clean of what it originally meant. So when you see that revelation line about salve or that weird poison-proof miracle in Mark, Hillman doesn't see metaphors. He sees the linguistic fossils of a pharmacological age the church tried to bury. Just to clarify here, Hillman himself never appeared on the podcast with Danny Jones and Bart Ehrman. Bart was rebutting Danny Jones's paraphrase of Hillman's books and in-person discussion, not any direct on-air claims. When Hillman's argument came up on the Danny Jones podcast, Bart didn't refute it. He reached for a Greek lexicon and said Christos isn't a drug term. And in a strictly academic sense of considering the current scholarly consensus in this day and age, he's right. The problem is, things change with time and knowledge. Hillman isn't just arguing etymology, he's arguing historical usage. How Chrio functioned in a world where language wasn't metaphor first, it was material. Salves, smoke, and pharmacology weren't poetic, they were religious tools. Ehrman is a New Testament specialist. Hillman is pulling from classical pharmacology, tragic drama, temple architecture, and ritual systems. Different toolkits. Different layers of the same word. Ehrman admitted he hadn't checked Euripides. He hadn't looked at Galen. That's not a rebuttal. That was a missed opportunity. Because it does. It really does. I knew a guy once who swore he saw Jesus in the different colors on rocks. He'd walk around town collecting them all day, take them home, and just stare at them for hours. He was sure he found God in rocks. Total burnout, lit half the time, brain completely fried. And yeah, the second he said God spoke to me, I didn't just roll my eyes. I knew it was the drugs. That wasn't divine. That was delusion. That was somebody using mind-altering substances. Now, flip that around. If the Bible turns out to be full of people doing the same thing, taking substances, hitting altered states, and then claiming they saw God, how exactly are we supposed to take them seriously? Because if Hillman's right, and Christianity inherited the language of ritual drugs, vision-inducing salves, and cultic initiation, then what people call divine revelation from a sky daddy might not be revelation at all. It might be a pharmacological hallucination, sanitized, stripped of context, and fixed in the little Bible as holy. And if that's true, that doesn't just poke holes in doctrine. That vaporizes the credibility of the entire foundation, not because drugs are evil, but because the church never told the truth about where the experience came from. They buried it. They rewrote it. They kept the word anoint and deleted what was in the jar. And now they have people build morality, theology, eternity on a bunch of goat herders out there picking up rocks and claiming God talked to them. If that's your source of truth, visions from guys tripping in the desert, then maybe the problem isn't the drugs. Maybe the problem is you still believe it. So yeah, this matters. I'm not a Hillman fanboy. I keep getting whining in the comments. I don't even watch his videos usually, but I do know that Yahweh's tent made a lot of sense to me, it being a hot box, and there are some suspicious lines left over in the Bible that should be further scrutinized. Refusing to even consider the implications of this is a mistake. Hillman may never be able to break through with the current academic crowd. Maybe he's too abrasive. Maybe he just doesn't fit the mold. But the truth has a habit of showing up eventually. It always does. Maybe not in his lifetime, maybe not in ours. Maybe it'll take someone with a little more polish, a little more charisma, saying the same thing, and suddenly people will listen. I'm not a biblical scholar. I wish I could do the digging myself, but I can't. What I can do is say this: someone should take these claims seriously enough to actually look. Not necessarily to believe him, but to check, to test, to find out. Anyway, that's all I've got for today. Just something to think about. Take care, and I'll see you in the next one.